morning, everyone. Good morning. First of all, can we give another round of applause to that dance company, Harambee Dance Company, thanking them for ushering in the spirit that I think that we need to have to proceed with our day. So many thanks. Good morning and welcome to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. My name is Joy Bivens, and I have the privilege of serving as the director of the Schomburg and the pleasure of welcoming you here on this incredible, beautiful Saturday morning. I wish I could take credit for it, but we will just take it and say thank you. Today is a day we have been waiting and working for over the last several months, the 4th annual Schomburg Literary Festival. And while this is the 4th year of the festival, it is only the 2nd time we have been able to gather in person, which makes it especially meaningful for us today. So we are also glad to see you here and to be able to fellowship with you live and in person. The Schomburg Center is home to one of the world's richest collections of materials that document and celebrate the experiences of people of African descent. And for nearly a century, we have collected and preserved the histories and cultures of Black people from around the world. Our collection holds treasures including the papers of James Baldwin, Lorraine Hansberry, who is the inspiration for Allison Sarr's sculpture, which you will see on our front plaza, and I hope that you have a moment to sit a while with that sculpture. And we are also the home to so many other collections of cultural luminaries. The Literary Festival expands our long tradition of celebrating authors of African descent from across the globe. You'll excuse me, I'm a little nervous. I haven't been in front of this many people in a while. And so now that we have that out of the way, this year's Literary Festival centers reading as both a rebellious and joyous act. We all know that tomorrow is Juneteenth, and we wanted to mark that important holiday by celebrating the creativity of Black people. Today is jam-packed with panels and conversations featuring some of our culture's most significant writers and creators, and those conversations will take place both inside and outside of our building. My colleagues have thought of everything. There will be book signings, events for children and adults alike, vendors along 135th Street, and of course, our own shop is open for your book and gift purchases. And before I bring Novella up to share more about the festival, I'd like to thank all of the Schomburg team, from facilities and security, the volunteers, Lisa Herndon in comms, Virginia Mixon and Kevin Matthews, who are taking the lead in the shop, development of the New York Public Library for their support, colleagues at County Cullen, all of the participants from vendors to authors for being here. There are a lot of people to thank, as you can imagine, and I mentioned a lot of names, and if I've forgotten somebody, I ask that you please forgive me. I'm sure you can imagine that an event like this is a massive undertaking, and I'd like to extend deep gratitude to 2 colleagues in particular, Kalila Bates, Associate Producer of Public Programs, and I'd also like to extend deep gratitude to Novella Ford, our Associate Director of Exhibitions and Public Programs, for all of their work in bringing this day to fruition. And finally, I'd like to extend deep gratitude to all of you for being here and for your support of the Schomburg Center. We rely on it, we need it, we thank you for it. Now I hope that you enjoy the day and that you have a great Juneteenth holiday, remembering the ancestors, remembering what we're really celebrating on June 19th. And I would now like you to join me in welcoming Novella Ford to the podium, and I thank you all for being here. Enjoy your day.
Good morning, and thank you all for getting up and joining us. Let's give another round of applause for the Harambee Dance Company. Thank you, Joy, for that wonderful introduction. And Of course, I could tell you so much about the Schomburg Center, but we're going to let you see a little bit more about the Schomburg Center via our video, and then I will introduce the rest of our day.
What is the Schomburg Center? To me, it is home. The place where we come to see who we really are, not just somebody else's reflection of who we are.
The Schomburg Center is a place of culture, it's a place of history, it's a place of knowledge.
The Schomburg Center, to me, is a repository of all of the things that has documented our sense of worth as a people.
For me, that means that it is a place of immense power.
The Schomburg Center is a public research library and a cultural institution.
For the study of the Pan-African world.
It is perhaps the best in the world.
My Schomburg Center is Arturo Alfonso Schomburg.
Arturo Schomburg said, Black history and culture and intellect exists at a time when most people didn't believe that. He collected those evidences, and that became the beginning of the collection.
And it has expanded and has grown to where it is now a world-class institution.
It holds over 10 million items.
There's no parallel anywhere that brings to light what we as people of color have done, what we continue to do.
Black culture is all of culture. The universals that animate everyone's life happen here for all people.
The Schomburg, for me, is one of the center pillars of Harlem. When I started the journey of finding out about Red Rooster and Harlem, the very first place I went to was the Schomburg.
Researchers from around the world come and use what we have here.
I could not have written just about any of the books that I've written without the Schomburg Center's archives, resources.
The Schomburg Center is much more than a library. We encourage lifelong learning and exploration.
The Junior Scholars Program is a Saturday program with students from 5th grade to senior year in high school to help them learn about Black history and culture.
Learning about my history is important because it teaches me who I am.
The Schomburg Junior Scholars Program is going to do nothing but uplift them.
So many talented and brilliant people have walked the corridors of this amazing institution over the years. From Octavia Butler to Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, Ella Fitzgerald, Alvin Ailey, and Harry Belafonte, who graced the stage in this room of the American Negro Theater.
This place evokes great memories. It was a gift to us in our community to really try to find that space to reflect expressions of Black experience. I just knew that the environment and what I saw these young African Americans doing was a place I needed to be.
What is my Schomburg Center? I'm standing here at the Cosmogram, which underneath holds the ashes of the poet Langston Hughes. On the evening when this Cosmogram was dedicated, people began to empty out of the auditorium. A jazz trio struck up, and to my amazement, Amira Baraka went over and asked Maya Angelou for a dance. And they started to dance on top of the Cosmogram, on top of the ashes of Langston Hughes, and I felt what a fitting way to kiss the memory of Langston.
The Schomburg Center is a research institute and a library, but it's so much more than that.
There's something going on every day.
So many amazing people come here to talk about their creative craft, to share what inspires them. The Schomburg Center's collections help to tell stories even beyond our walls.
The Schomburg Center is here in this exhibition at MoMA, One-Way Ticket, Jacob Lawrence's Migration Series. We depend on the resources of the Schomburg to enable us to tell this story. Thinking about the implications of the past on the present is absolutely crucial for understanding the next steps, understanding what we have to do to go forward.
We today have the responsibility of making sure that new artists and activists, new scholars and poets know that this place continues to be a resource and a source of inspiration for the work that we must continue to do.
The Schomburg Center is knowledge.
The Schomburg Center, to me, is education.
The Schomburg Center is home, it is family, it is foundational.
The Schomburg Center is inspiration.
The Schomburg is with me in everything that I do.
Community, inside and out.
The Schomburg Center is us.
The Schomburg Center is you, and we invite each and every one of you to find your Schomburg Center.
Good morning again. I want to just shout out you folks over here in the corner. The ASL team, teamwork makes the dream work. We're sorry that you are not lit as well as you could be, but thank you. Thank you to Tech. Thank you for bearing with us through all the things. I came up here with a whole bunch of stuff on the podium just to let you know that we have some fabulous swag for you, so I just don't want you all to not forget. This year we are celebrating, as Joy said, the act of reading as an act of rebellion and joy, and really thinking about this Juneteenth as how our ancestors, or many of enslaved people, there was a time where reading was completely a dangerous act, right? That was something that you could not willingly do. There were people who did not want you to access certain information. And so we can't take for granted today what it means to be able to walk into a library and get a book for free, or be able to purchase a book on some topic that we are particularly interested in. And so while many communities around the country will mark Juneteenth tomorrow as a mark of emancipation and freedom, the freedom that we're celebrating is the freedom to access information in the many ways that we want to. So that is what we are celebrating today, and I know that all of you are very much bold and dangerous readers, so I thank you all for being out here. So that's why this bag reads, Reading, Rebellious, Joyful, Necessary. So I hope you pick up something there. Also, if you purchase anything or see around, we have fantastic bookmarks, which also give you access to the schedule. So if you don't have one of these handy dandy schedules in your hand, make sure you pick one up. But if you don't have one and you see this bookmark around, you can also scan it to access that. Again, my name is Novella Ford, and I'm the Associate Director of Public Programs and Exhibitions here at the Schomburg Center. And I think I'm going to just keep asking you all to applaud because we need that energy this morning. We are so excited to reconvene our community of book lovers to interact with their favorite authors on 135th Street in Harlem after 2 years being a virtual festival. We're also excited for you to discover authors that maybe you don't know or works that you want to get into. We start the day outside with our Woke Baby Children's Festival, as well as indoors here where you all are today. So if you have folks who are wondering, is there a program for children? Absolutely. Starting the day, there's children yoga, there's reading with music for children, there's bookmark making, there's craft making all day long. We have the incredible Jacqueline Woodson, who will be reading from her latest book, The World Belonged to Us, which is, there's this beautiful, on the cover, there's a beautiful scene of kids jumping double dutch, and so we have Double Dutch Dreams doing a demonstration of double dutch after that conversation. So there's plenty here for children, but also for the adults here who may have children in your life and you're trying to figure out what's your next gift in addition to the toy, because also kids be like, books. But so when you hand them that toy and the books, there is plenty for you to access. I want to say thank you to our lead sponsor, Deutsche Bank America's Foundation, as well as the support that we've received from Corbin Capital LP and HarperCollins Publishers. Thank you so much for your support of this year's festival, but also the support of the festival during the pandemic and quarantine. Good books create space for all of our humanity to exist. And I hope that you consider the Schomburg Center Literary Festival as a destination you can return to year after year to see yourself and to expand your understanding of Black cultures through literature. Visit our festival website. Again, that's at SchomburgCenterLitFest.org. That's SchomburgCenterLitFest.org. And again, you can access the schedule in the brochure. The Schomburg Center inherited the intellectual legacy of the 135th Street Library. And this 135th Street Library was described by scholar and historian David Levering Lewis as the intellectual pulse of Harlem. And so this festival is also our way of saying thank you to our librarians, thank you to libraries for existing. And so let's give it up for all the librarians who have ever been in our lives. So we are starting the conversation here inside the Langston Hughes Auditorium with two best-selling authors. On some level, right, like when I look at them, I think of the bad folks of literature. Like these are like folks who are incredible, voracious readers, prolific writers, offer criticism about society that we live today, but also incredible champions of reading, from the littlest ones to the oldest ones in our society. And Jason Reynolds and Roxane Gay will be talking to us about reading as an act of joy and rebellion. Now, how many of you all know Jason Reynolds? Right on. And how many of you all know Roxane Gay? So you already know. These are two powerhouse writers. I feel like that was the entire room. What am I going to tell you that you don't already know about these folks? But Jason Reynolds, again, is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of more than a dozen books for young people, including Look Both Ways, A Tale Told in 10 Blocks, All-American Boys, Long Way Down, Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, which is a sort of a younger reader's read with the Ibram X. Kendi, based on the Ibram X. Kendi book, and Stump Boy, as well as his most recent book, Ain't Burned All the Bright, with artwork by Jason Griffin. And actually, if you haven't seen that book, it's gorgeous, it's substantial. I highly recommend it. And Roxane Gay is someone who has changed the way that I think about the world sometimes. And she's someone who takes her agency seriously, whose writing is as bold as her opinions. She is the author of books 80 An Untamed State, New York Times bestselling Bad Feminists, the nationally bestselling Difficult Women, the New York Times bestselling Hunger. She's also author of World of Wakanda for Marvel. She has several books forthcoming and is also at work on television and film projects. She also has a newsletter, The Audacity, and a podcast, The Roxane Gay Agenda. So I hope that I've only whet your appetite for both of these authors. Please, you can read more about them on our website, peruse their books in our bookshop, both indoors and outdoors. And let's welcome Jason Reynolds and Roxane Gay to kick us off.
Good morning. Welcome back.
Yeah, the last time I was in this space, it was in March 2020. And we were here for a Haitian jazz singer, and she was incredible. And then the world,
Who was it? It was Cecile McLaurin-Salvant?
No, what was her name? Oh, she was incredible too. She had a little band. I've been following her ever since, but I can't remember her name. But she was, yes, Pauline Jean. She was incredible. And so it's great to be back here again and in a slightly different world. How are you this morning, Jason?
I'm good. It's weird. Mm-hmm. I haven't quite acclimated to being back outside, but I'm good. I'm happy to be here for sure.
Yeah, it is weird to be sort of back in the world. How did you spend your pandemic? I mean,
sad, you know what I mean? Like, mostly sad, you know what I mean? Honestly, I think for me, my pandemic was spent recalibrating. Mm-hmm. I think it gave me well, first of all, I am still serving as the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. Yes. And thank you very much. And I was inaugurated in January of 2020. In March of 2020, I was supposed to hit the road, go on tour, travel around America, do my job, right, as the ambassador. But of course, COVID happens, we lock down, and now I have a new task. It's like president in a time of war, right? It's like now I have to sort of adjust and serve the young people of America in a very different way. That was difficult, made some adjustments, made some pivots, and hopefully, when we look back on it, we'll be able to say, I got the job done.
I think you got the job done.
I'm still trying.
Yeah. You know, I saw your episode of Antiques Roadshow, which is a show I love.
This is a wild segue.
I mean, you know, I just, you're going to see the lineage is there. And I know that you are a collector of objects and ephemera related to Black authors, which is a really niche thing, but it's so important because so much of our history has been ignored or forgotten or is lost. It exists, but people think it doesn't. And so what draws you to these objects in particular and this kind of collecting?
You know, I grew up in a house with a mother who believes in collecting and saving everything. Some of you may have mothers that way, right? My mother has my whole life in like 3 or 4 drawers. Like everything I've ever done, every honor roll certificate, every picture I ever drew, every poem I wrote as a child, old sneakers that she refuses to throw away because she's like, oh no, one day these gonna go in a museum, right? It's like all this stuff. And so I was raised in this sort of household where posterity meant something and archiving meant something. My mother recently gave me a letter that her sister wrote her 50 years ago to tell her that she was pregnant and that she needed my mother to help her tell their parents. And she saved this letter for 50 years, right? My mother saved her mother's lucky numbers that my grandmother scrawled on a piece of paper and kept in her wallet. My mother then kept that same piece of paper in her wallet since my grandmother passed away in 1993 and gave it to me and was like, hey, do something with this.
All right, so do you have them on you?
Right, I don't have them on me. They're framed on the wall in my house.
Oh.
Right, my grandfather's last pack of cigarettes are framed on the wall in my house. Right, my great-great-great-grandfather, post-emancipation, his wedding certificate is framed on the wall in my house, right? So like it's a part of who I am. So when it came down to like when I started to collect Black ephemera from writers, I think I just got an issue with like any museum that is not a Black museum having our stuff. And I just feel like if I have the resources, I'm gonna go ahead and fight for, I'd rather have it than for it to exist in sort of these spaces that I'm not sure actually honors it in the way that I would. And so my friends come over, I pull it all out. We look at Langston Hughes letters, we look at postcards from the, right? It's just, I don't know. I got like old Lucille Clifton one-off pieces, and I've got like Yusef Komanyaka letters that he wrote to a young editor who was editing his work for a journal when he was already a legend and he was acquiescing to a 19-year-old. I've got, all sorts of random things, and I just love it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I've been thinking a lot about archives and Black archives in particular because last year an amazing book was released, co-edited by Jenna Wortham and Kimberly Drew called Black Futures.
Absolutely.
And in it is basically an archive of the Black internet, of really Black culture over the past few decades. And one of the things that struck me is that we are a generation that is building on the work of our elders who started creating archives whether they realized it or not. Right. What kinds of things that you are creating now do you want to see to go in an eventual archive?
So I'm old school, and because I value the archive so much, so I write letters to everybody, right, handwritten. My fear is that the generations coming up, that the archive will be lost, or at least bits of it, because we will no longer have the identity and the sort of snowflake effect of handwriting, right? This thing that is only ours. Each of us has a very particular thing, and it doesn't exist anymore because don't nobody write nothing, right? And so I make it a point to send. I sent out a postcard yesterday to a friend who lived around the corner, right? Just so that friend can keep it, like just hold on to this, right? And send me one back, right? I've got letters from, I value me, Jacqueline Woodson in this, she doesn't,
Yeah, she's Jack. I mean, we're friends.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird when you say her nickname in front of like, she's
You're
like,
like
Jacqueline in the public, you know what I mean? but even when I'm with her, we talk about this all the time, right? And I begged her, she has a photograph of herself from when she was 18 years old. Around her neck is a necklace that was given to her by Audre Lorde. She doesn't like the photograph.
I mean,
and
girl.
so I begged her, and I'm like, look, when it's over, will this to me? And so she did. So she did, right? So thinking about it that way. So for me, every single thing, I mean, I write everything down. I have all paper drafts. I don't do any track changes. My editors, all of my editors are old school. I make sure that they at least send me one, even if they're not old school. I ask them to send me one, the first draft, in paper with line edits and notes in ink. So I have every single book I've ever written, every single draft of every single book. I have old photographs. I have the pieces of paper that I would brainstorm the titles of my books. They're all saved. I have all my journals, right? So I keep a journal that I've been keeping for a very long time. They're all sort of stored and organized. Everything is there so that when it's my turn, they can just give it to the Schomburg and it's ready to go.
Yeah. I guess it's true. When you stay ready, you don't need to get ready. Because I'm the exact opposite. I don't write a single thing down. And every time someone's like, what do you do with your archive? I'm like, well, here's my hard drive. My handwriting's terrible.
I'm going to send you a letter.
Yeah, send me a letter. Let me get started. Let me, like, item 1, 2022. Now, you're a very prolific writer. 19 books as of this year. And I'm always interested in the way that people use the word prolific, especially when it comes to Black writers. It sometimes feels like an accusation. Like, why are you outpacing me? Because I can. And so, how do you think about your writing and your output, and what does your process look like when you are working on so many different things?
I never think about it in terms of output. It just kind of happens that way. Mm-hmm. I think about it in terms of habit. Writing is habit for me, and I try to work every day in some capacity. If it's scribbling in a notebook, if it's scribbling on my phone, I just think that, like, as a person who's not a religious man, as someone who has had to find or who has sought his faith and his groundedness by other means, this is sort of the thing that keeps me on the level. Mm-hmm. I struggle. I have clinical anxiety. I have all the things, right? And so despite therapy, right, which is also a huge part of my life, there's also this thing that I go to every day as a way to kind of work out whoever it is that I am in that moment. It just so happens on the other end of that, there's productivity, right? But for me, it's like, look, I just do a little bit of work every day because this is what I need to do to get me right. It's no different than a cup of coffee. It's no different than a hot bath. It's no different than kneeling at an altar. It's no different than a hug from a parent, right? This is the thing that I need in order to feed myself what I need to get through the madness of our time.
I'm often the same way in that writing for me is a coping mechanism with a lot of the chaos of the world. And when people ask me about my process, I feel kind of selfish because it's like, oh, I'm just doing this to stay sane. Mm-hmm. And to, function well. And there is this benefit in that something comes out of it at the end of the day. And so since you work on your work every day, what feels like a good writing day for you? Is it anything, or is there a particular amount, not in terms of quantity, but quality of work that makes you feel like, yes?
I try not to, I try to let myself off the hook when it comes to that. Because every day is a different day. And you don't really know. Writing is hard, if there's any young people in here and you're having a hard time writing, me too, right? Like, me too, like, writing is hard. And I think, so for me, I think that as long as I'm faithful to the process, that's my whole thing. I'm only disappointed in myself if I haven't made a little time for me in that space, right? And even that, I'm not sure is always healthy, but I try to be faithful to the process. I try to kneel at the altar of creativity a little bit every single day. I prefer to do it for 3 or 4 hours, but if it's only going to come down to a half an hour because we got all the other things we have to do, then it is what it is, right? And there are some days where that's That's 3,000 words, and there are some days where it's me rewriting the same sentence over and over again. It's some days where it's me reading something, looking for something that I can't quite find. And then you got to remember that, like for me, right? And I don't know, it's different for us all, but for me, it's also about like writing is about transformation, right? So it's about contemplation, it's about sort of meditation, but it's also about transformation, because it's impossible for me to sit at the page and not have to confront all of myselves. Because there's no one else in the room. There's not enough distraction there for me to not hear the parts of me that are afraid and insecure, the parts of me that are traumatized and arrogant, the parts of me that are like, all of our stuff, it comes to the forefront. And so a lot of the process is me trying to figure out which of these voices is the voice that's necessary for me to get the job done today. And tomorrow it may be a very different voice. And so a lot of the time it's me wrestling with self, which is why at the end of a thing, or when this product is made, I am also a different person. I have to be, because of the wrestling with my many, 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 many selves.
What is the most significant transformation that you've made as a writer?
Trusting the reader. I think the hardest part for me about being a writer, there's this thing that happens, especially for young writers, and really for most of us, there's a thing that if a person here is writing their first novel, I can pretty much tell you exactly what your editor is going to say, right? And usually your editor is going to say that you've overwritten. And the reason that happens so often is because I believe that the number one phobia for humanity actually isn't public speaking, which is what they say it is. I think the number one phobia is to be misunderstood. And so what happens is we overwrite because we don't want anyone to misconstrue what it is we're trying to say. And I think part of what I've had to learn over the course of these 18 years of doing this work is I have to trust myself enough to trust the reader and to know that the reader will do a little work for me, and that this is actually a collaborative thing, a conversation, a relationship that we're building. I'm making a thing and you're responding to that thing, but we are in dialogue. It's not that you're just, it's like reading has never been even when it's casual, it's active.
Yes.
Right? And so I think that's been the hardest part, is like, trust the reader will be able to connect these dots. You don't gotta spell it all out.
Yes, and people do struggle with that. My first editor, of course, did say that, and she's still my fiction editor for my first novel. I overwrote that baby.
An Untamed State?
An Untamed State.
It's a masterpiece. Can we talk about this for a second? 1 second.
All right.
Has anyone in here read, so we all know that the great Roxane Gay is known for lots of things. These days I feel like she's elevated because of her nonfiction work. I personally think, has anyone read her fiction?
Oh, thank you.
So for all of you who have not read her fiction, do yourself a favor. And I think it'll change the way, she's good at nonfiction. Just read her fiction. It's a game changer. Continue.
This is my favorite thing about you, and it's so vague, but I think of myself primarily as a fiction writer, and the world does not. And I mean, don't cry for me, it's fine. But I'm always like, read my little 2 books, they're good.
Very good, very good.
But I had to pull back significantly, and my editor kept saying, this is too much. And that's saying something, given that it's still quite a lot. And, I really had to learn to trust that she was right. And the older I get, the easier it is. And now that I teach, I often tell my students, first of all, you've written 3 endings here. Like, this is Lord of the Rings, pull it back.
Pull it back.
And, it's really hard, I think, oftentimes to trust the reader because, especially now, we live in a fairly polarized culture where people seem to lead with misunderstanding, to lead with not giving people the benefit of the doubt. Does that ever affect how you think about trusting the reader, knowing that sometimes people are going to willfully misunderstand your work?
Sometimes. If I'm being honest, I think it would be disingenuous for me to say that it doesn't affect me at all. I mean, it's hard to not think about, your intention being guillotined in a certain way, right? Like especially because I work primarily for children. The stakes are even higher. Because if you get it wrong, or if somebody perceives that it's wrong, they also attach that to like the damaging of the most vulnerable amongst us, right? It's like, not only did you get this wrong, but it's damaging to a child. And so it's sort of a double whammy. And so I think in the, so do I think about that? Yes. Does it ever sort of become debilitating? I can't afford for that to happen because I'd rather swing the bat and miss than to not swing the bat, knowing that there are so many young people in the world who are looking for these stories, right? And so I just do the best I can. And I've been checked. I've had kids come up to me and be like, hey, you remember in that book, there's this one part where you say this? It's like, that ain't, right? Or this character feels a little under the, my first novel, When I Was the Greatest, is this character in that novel who has Tourette syndrome. And when I wrote the book, I was really proud of this thing I made. And then I had a kid come up to me in the Bronx, actually, who was like, yo, so are you going to do another book about a sequel about the kid with Tourette syndrome? And I was like, nah. And I was like, why do you ask? They was like, because he don't really have a lot of speaking parts, and he got Tourette syndrome. He ain't like mute. So why doesn't he speak more? And I had to look that kid in the face and just say, because it was an oversight, because I made a mistake. I could lie, but I can't lie, especially to a child. I made a mistake. Thank you for calling it out. Now I know better. I'll keep that in mind if I'm ever going to write anybody who has any sort of neurodivergence in any other book. I'll make sure to make them whole people. I think this through. It's hard to make a good novel. It's hard to get it all right. And I have been grateful that there has been some grace extended to me when I have made those mistakes, which I have made, which I will continue to make. And hopefully I've done more good in the world than bad, and I have to kind of sleep at night knowing that that's hopefully the case.
Yes, and you absolutely have done more good in the world. One of the things that strikes me about that is humility and being able to receive feedback, which is really challenging as a writer in that, it's something so intimate and personal. Like you said, there's all of these selves that you're alone with, and there's nothing else to confront but yourself on the page, and then people dissect it a lot. And then, of course, some people do it with good intention, and some people are wildly disingenuous. Yeah. And do you know how to filter the kinds of feedback you receive?
I do. I do. I think, and I don't know if I can sort of codify that, right? I don't know if there's a way for me to tell you exactly how I know that. I just trust my gut. I know when somebody is being earnest, and I know when somebody is being mean, right? I can discern whether or not you rocking with me or whether or not you throwing rocks at me, right? Those are two different things. And also, but also, my mother, there are people in my life that I respect. I run to them, right? Because the truth is that I make a thing that the world then reads, but the truth is that it's none of my business what the world thinks of it. It's none of my business, right? It really, look, if you got a problem with me, that ain't my business. That's your business, right? If you got a problem with the thing I made, then you make something better, right? I challenge you to make something better, right? And that's not a diss. That's me being honestly, please make a better version of it that you would have wanted to see. Get mine out of here, right? Make a better one. And I think that's my biggest issue is that we work so hard and people don't know it and they don't want to hear us cry about it and we can't and we don't because what a life, right? But I feel like, we work so hard. And someone who has never picked up a pen, has never tried to write anything, will read something that took you 3 years, 5 years to write, and read it in 3 days, 5 days, and write a diatribe about how you are the worst writer they have ever heard. They'll call out every negative thing. And I'm like, yeah, but you write it. Write anything. Yes. That's how I really feel. Like there's a petty part of me that's like, oh, word. So you better? Let's see you do it then.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm right there with you on the petty bus because I don't go to Goodreads. I use Goodreads as a reader, but I do not look at my own Goodreads. People are rating Goodreads on my Goodreads for books I haven't finished. So I'm always like, well, thanks for letting me know how it's going to turn out. But people do just seem to not care about the care that we put into our work. But I agree. I always tell people it's not my business. When people send, people who pretend to be friends send me negative reviews. Why would you do that? I was having a good day. It is not my business. That is something between you and whoever, but it is not between you and me because my work is on the page.
That's done.
And that's where the work ends. And it seems, especially for Black writers, that people often want us to do more. Yeah. They want us to sort of do caretaking and and we do it. oftentimes.
Yeah.
But they want to be, especially white people, want to be like educated.
Yeah.
Hold my hand. Teach me how to be a better ally. Like, teach yourself. Google is right there.
Yeah.
So how do you determine who gets your care and who doesn't? Because you lead with quite a lot of caring in your work.
For sure. If you're a child, you get my care. It's simple for me. Like, for me, it ain't even no, if you're a kid, I'm going to figure it out. Or I'm going to do the best I can to figure it out. And to be honest with you, if you're a black kid, I'm really about to bend over backward, right? But if you're any child, I'm going to rock with it and figure it out. But if you're a black kid, I'm finna do backflips for you, right? To make sure that you know that we exist in the world, right? That you got a place in the world, that you got somebody who loves you, that, you know, like, that's a big deal. And as far as what's tricky and what gets real dicey for me, because so much of my work is used in schools, is that I also get white educators who are like, yo, I need you to teach me how to do this. And I feel torn because this person is teaching our children.
Yeah.
So I feel like, well, look, either I can ignore this person or I could try to figure out a way to protect my babies by giving this person what I need them to have to protect my babies, since I'm not in the classroom teaching. And that's when it gets complicated, because I'm only one person and I don't have a lot of time, and I also can't teach you, right? Which is often my response, like, well, Jason, what do I need to know in order to be a better ally? You need to know you, right? Like, you need to get to know yourself. Be honest with yourself about who you really are and how you really feel about your biases and your prejudgments. I can't teach you that. Ain't no books out here for that. You got to be honest about that, right? And so I get real sort of concerned, because I want to make sure that I answer these sort of these requests, because I know who they're teaching. And at the same time, it's like, yo, I don't owe you that. You owe yourself that, especially since you owe our children that, you know what I mean?
It can be hard to draw that boundary, and because I think a lot of times we want to give as much as we can to make sure that our work is well forwarded into the world, into students' minds and hearts, hopefully. But at the same time, like, that's also not something we're necessarily trained to do.
No.
Like, we don't all come with like curricula already imagined. It's like, no, again, the book was the work. And we were talking about this downstairs, like, the more successful you are as a writer, the less time you actually have to write, because you are asked to do all kinds of things that are sort of writing tangential, but not writing itself.
Yeah.
How do you make decisions about what you do with your time beyond the page?
I haven't been good at it. You know, the pandemic was brutal in a lot of ways, and one of the ways it was a blessing for me was that it forced me to, like, I couldn't say yes to anything. And it forced me to kind of figure out how I am going to be more balanced in my life. But I haven't been good at it. I was doing before, in 2019, from 2014 to 2019, I was on the road 200 days a year.
Same.
200 days a year, you know what it's like.
I do.
And it's brutal. My younger brother was with me, and I was complaining this morning about my body, because it hurts all the time. And he like, but you ain't even that old. And I'm like, I spent my whole life on airplanes. Every day I'm on an airplane, right? And so I think I have been a bit of a bleeding heart in a way that has caused me, there's been a tremendous price to the ticket. Physically, mentally, and emotionally. Family, I'm not around my family there's a tremendous cost to trying to serve everybody else. And I've paid it. And now I'm like, all right, I need to figure out a healthier way to do this. Because I ain't no benefit to nobody if I don't make it to 40, right? Let me figure out how to scale this thing back. You know, my therapist is like, yo, you gotta, you know, my doctors are all like, hey, you need to figure out how to take some of this off your plate. And like I said, it's even trickier when you're dealing with young people. It's just hard, it's hard. But I have to believe that there are other people who can do this, who can carry some of that weight, and we'll be all right.
Absolutely.
And some of that, and to be honest with you, some of that has to do, like, it's interesting, right, the way ego shows itself, right? Because some of that's about my own ego, right? It's like, I ain't gotta do all this, and nor can I do all of this, but you feel like, once you realize something you made works, right, there's a weird thing that happens to you where it's like, yo, you know, go ahead, give them what they need as if you're the only person they need, right? If there's other people out here who could do this work and who are doing this work very well, and let me look, y'all go, I'm done. Y'all go take that and do what y'all need to do. You know?
I think that's a really important lesson to learn, that when the pandemic started, I mean, it was very terrible, but it was also very good, because from 2014 to 2020, after 2 weeks of the pandemic, that was the longest I had been in one place.
It's wild.
And I was able to bring my parents out to us in Los Angeles, where we were, so that we could have that time. And I was able to start to make up for all of the absence, both with my parents, with my siblings, with my partner, and it was great. And I said, I'm gonna do better when things get back. And I'm certainly not the only feminist and womanist out in the world doing things, like, truly, certainly. And if I'm the only name in your Rolodex, you have a shitty Rolodex.
Right.
And then the minute things sort of came back, like, I'm heading to the airport right after this. And it's just like, it's hard to stop. It is hard to stop and to say, I don't actually have to do this. I'm allowed to say no. 2 times a week I'm in therapy. And the main thing we talk about is, how do I say no? How do I back out of some of this shit? Because, I mean, I can't do it all.
Can't do it.
And so how do you learn to take care of yourself? Which I think is something, especially Black people, we're within a decade of each other.
Yeah.
Black people of our generations struggle with.
Yeah, I think for me, so I preface this by saying, like, I have been fortunate enough to have some privilege and resource because of this career, which I'm grateful for, thanks to you all, right? Which I'm really grateful for, right? And I don't ever want to pretend like that's not the case, because I think that's whack, and people always be like, I'm stressed. Listen, I'm grateful, and the truth is that, like, I'm doing okay, and because I'm doing okay, right? And because I'm doing okay, I have made some decisions that have created tremendous peace in my life to help me say no. First thing I did was I bought season tickets.
Oh, nice.
To the basketball game. And the reason why, and it sounds so frivolous until you realize that a few times a week when it's basketball season, I have to do nothing but scream at people and cheer. And it's 3 hours that I don't have to think about work. There's nothing to think about but, like, the game, right? And there's something about it, because if I watch it at home, I'm gonna pull out my laptop, or I'm gonna pull out my notebook, or I'm gonna figure out a way to do the thing that I'm trying to get away from. I'm gonna say, I'm home, I'll do a Zoom thing, I'll do whatever, right? But knowing that I had, and my therapist was the one who was like, you should get you some season tickets. And I refused to break the appointment, right? So my manager gets the schedule every year. We can't do no traveling on these days, right? Because on these days, I gotta be downtown at the game, screaming and hollering, and it's been a gift. I've been trying to convince Kiese. I'm like, yo,
get him on that.
I've been like, yo, because he's an athlete.
Yes.
He was an athlete. I'm like, get you some season tickets, and because you got paid so much money for him, you gonna go, right? Right? It's a thing that's gonna happen, right?
Yes.
The other thing, just recently that I've done, bought some fishing rods.
Oh.
Like, I'm really on here on my old white man. Like, I'm on my, like, so I bought some fishing rods, and that was peace.
Where are you gonna fish?
Wherever there's water.
All right.
Wherever there's water. You know, and when I went into the store to buy the rods, there's an old white dude with a beard. I was nervous as soon as I walked in the door, right? I was nervous. His name was Grizzly. I was very concerned. Very concerned. Everything about the situation was like, this is gonna go all bad. But he ended up being this really sweet guy, and we were talking about it, and fishing helped him get clean, right? He's been sober 30 years, and he attributes it to fishing. And he was telling me, he said, look, what's gonna happen is you're gonna fish, and then you're gonna fish, and then at the 10-year mark, right, or the 20-year mark, he's like, you're gonna realize that you've been fishing all this time, and you ain't never been fishing for fish.
Oh.
And that's what it's about, right? That's what it's about. And so it's just about being out there, being quiet. So that's happening, right? Like, I'm doing a lot of napping. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just working it out.
Yeah. A nap is just what a gift. What a gift.
What a gift. For all of y'all who don't like naps, get your life together.
Yeah.
Shout out to the nappers in the room.
I'm married to an expert napper. I can't. It's too much. but like she makes sleep her job. When I left this morning, she was just like, goodbye, and rolled right over. And I was just like, all right, for better and worse. Now, I know that your work has been targeted for censorship, and as someone whose work has also been targeted, you know, I certainly feel some kind of way about it, but also I'm just like, you're just selling more books. But I read that recent CNN piece where you talk about this, and I was really intrigued about your discussion of the function of discomfort, because I think about discomfort all the time. A lot of my work is explicitly designed to make people feel discomfort, because that's where I think some of the most productive change can happen.
Sure.
When we have to face ourselves, when we have to face the world as it is. What are some other lessons that we should be taking from literature, and especially literature from young people, especially in a time when so many malevolent forces are trying to diminish our voices?
Yeah. A few things. I think number one, there's this weird cliche that gets thrown out amongst people who work with kids, who work with young people's literature, librarians, teachers, everybody, where it's like, well, you know, reading teaches empathy, right? There's this thing that we all say. And look, here's the thing. I think that that is sometimes true. It's weird how we all live in like tweets now. It's like you say this really succinct thing, and you're like, that is a fact. And it's like, life don't really go like that, right? And plus, we know people, when you get all of the adults in the room, you know people who have read everything, and they're all jerks, right? Like, we all know. We know that like, they don't see the world any differently than they're just as closed-minded as they were, even though they've read all the things, right? If anything, they use the fact that they've read all the things as a separator, right? And they create elitism, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm here and you're there because you haven't read Hemingway, or, you know, whatever, right? Joyce. So for me, I try not to think, even though I know that with young people, that's more likely that there will be some empathy gained, right? I get that. But I think that there are more important things that happen during reading besides that. Number one, I think when young people are reading, they're learning the most important soft skills that they could ever have. I think that reading is literally the gymnasium where a young person learns how to sort of strengthen their ability to concentrate, their ability to be persistent, because one has to be disciplined to make it through a book.
Yes.
And they learn that, right? Consistency. They learn that. Vocabulary. And the broader one's vocabulary is, the more likely one is to stay out of prison. This is what we know for sure, right? They learn how to protect their imaginations and foster their imaginations in a world that is constantly trying to strip it. Most importantly, they learn how to listen to themselves. Because when you are reading, it is not the writer's voice you hear. It's your voice. That's a valuable, valuable thing. So I think this is like the one sector of it, right? The other thing, though, is that I think that young people's literature creates a space for them to wrestle with ideas. I don't think that books are actually meant to, I think that, like, just because I present an idea to you don't mean you have to agree. I'm not forcing anything down your throat. I'm not actually trying to, like, there's this whole thing around indoctrination that people keep talking about. Like, Jason's trying to indoctrinate young people. First and foremost, I hate that we pretend like our entire lives haven't been indoctrination. Like all of school, like all of, I hate this, right? It's like, Jason's indoctrinating them. My whole thing is, I'm all about just challenging the doctrine. I know that I've been indoctrinated. My mama indoctrinated the hell out of me with the best things. So if there's going to be an indoctrination, let's just make sure we control the doctrine so that young people can be good adults, right? That being said, it's not always my intention to be doing that. I'm trying to create space for young people to wrestle with ideas. You don't have to, you can say no, you can say I disagree. You just can't disengage, right? And if we can do that, then these kids will grow up understanding that the world is actually nuanced, that intellectualism is important, that empathy is important as well, that disagreement is healthy sometimes, as long as it's not about the humanity of other people. You know, all of these things which I think are more valuable than just a story, which also, by the way, is enough, just so we're clear. A good story is a lot, you know?
It is. There are not, I mean, there are a lot of good stories, but a lot of times people discount the importance of just entertainment.
It's entertainment.
Reading for pleasure.
Escape. We all could use some. Go fishing, by the way.
Oh, I mean, that's the scariest thing I've heard. Not because I have a moral objection to fishing, but like that's a lot of time to be alone with oneself.
It's real. Like last time we talked, I told you I got a sleep number bed. That's been a game changer.
Oh, really? Was that good?
Of course.
A new bed, though, will do wonders when you have a bad bed.
Listen,
Oh.
get you a good bed. My mama say, only thing you're supposed to spend money on is shoes and bed, because if you ain't in one, you in the other. That's it.
Yep. I'll also say good sheets.
And good, yes.
Like when I get in bed, I want to feel like I'm gonna slide off.
If you wake up in the morning and all your dead skin is on your sheets, you gotta get some better sheets.
I think now is a really great time to open up to questions.
No question. Oh, okay.
Oh, no time? Okay.
Dang.
All right, sorry.
We had an hour of announcements.
I know.
We had an hour of announcements.
Literally.
We show up, y'all like, cut it short. Shout out to the Schomburg.
Haters. Thank you all so much. Jason Reynolds, everyone.
Thank you.
So we're gonna take you all for book signing in the lobby.
We're going that way?
But you can go around. Okay. If you like. Yeah. Oh.
But I am going for work. I timed it for 45 minutes.
You telling people to come?
Yeah. Good afternoon. I just want to remind everybody of the next panel. In here will be Health and Racism in America with Linda Villarosa, Under the Skin, The Hidden Toll of Racism in American Lives on the Health of Our Nation, moderated by Rebecca Carroll. There will also be a book signing in the Langston Hughes lobby with Jason Reynolds directly after this. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you soon.